All right, so now that we've talked about how to do the pre-reading part, let's talk a little bit more about the different types of questions that we would see on this exam. Now, one of the first types of questions we'll see will be the general questions. And these are the questions like, what is the developmental pattern of this passage? What is happening in this passage? Can you summarize? What is the purpose? That type of thing. And a couple of things to watch out for when you see a general question like that. Number one, watch out for very particular info given to you in the answer choices. So we're going to talk about the elimination strategies in the next video, but for now, just keep in mind that some of these answer choices are going to include very, very detailed descriptions of what happened in the passage, and when I say detailed, I mean it'll be tiny little specks of what was actually happening. While it may be accurate, that's not what the question was actually asking. The question asked you the general component, not can you tell me what happened in paragraph 3. All right, so that's one major thing to watch out for. Second major thing to watch out for when it comes to general questions, when they copy and paste statements from the passage into the answer choice, but they change around one or two words. And that actually changes the entire meaning of the answer choice. And as a result, that entire answer choice is wrong. However, most people look at it and say, oh wait, but that's what I read in the passage. They have this like the same words, they use the same context, etc. I'm gonna pick it. And that generally ends up being wrong. Be careful, watch out for what the question is asking you, pay attention, and make sure you're answering to the summary or to the general part and not to the very narrowed. Okay, so that covers the general questions. Now, let's talk about the vocab-in-context. Now, we saw a couple of these examples in the pre-read where you're basically given one word and asked, okay, what does this most nearly mean? A couple of things to watch out for in this instance. Number one, you are not defining the word that actually is given to you in that question. Watch out, because if you try defining it, what's going to happen is there will be at least two answer choices that mean that same word. So ultimately you'll end up stuck. Which one's better? Which one's not? Could it be? Could it not be? Etc. So don't take that approach. Instead, as we once again talked about with the pre-reading, what you're going to do is actually find that word in the actual text and then cross it out, completely black it out. Mark 5 up, 5 down from that question, so you have your sort of context window, and then after that, when you're actually reading the passage, you will write in your own word. Now, why am I emphasizing the write in your own word portion? Because most students say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to keep it in my head and I'll be fine. No, chances are you will not be fine, because then you'll look at the answer choices and try and convince yourself that, oh wait, that one could work too, or I guess that one could work too. And what ends up happening is you'll end up swayed a little bit more if you haven't written your own word down. Whereas if you write your word down, well, you wrote that word, first of all, when you were not swayed by anything, it was completely fresh in your mind, you had that context down because you just read what was going on, so you knew basically what the vibe of this sentence was going to be, and therefore you kind of picked the word that was in line with it. When you are choosing your own word, don't try and get fancy. There are no awards whatsoever for picking this magical, beautiful word. Just stick to simple, because the whole idea is to get the right vibe, the right gist of it. So it can be good, bad, evil, peaceful, whatever it is. You can even reuse the words that you've already seen in the passage. So once again, don't have to get creative, you just have to get precise in the definition of whatever the context is actually referring to. You may find, or rather what you will find by doing this, is that the correct answer ends up being some sort of a synonym of the word that you wrote in. It may not even relate anything to the word the question had, but it will be a synonym of the word that you wrote in. So those are the major ways of doing your vocab-in-context questions. After that, we have the buy one get one free questions. Now, what you might have noticed I did, and if not, then we will talk about this again as well, which is that with buy one get one free questions, there are a couple of things to watch out for. And I say buy one get one free, but it is very, very possible to get one question correct, but not the other one, even though they're talking about the very same thing. So watch out. First up, when you are doing one of these reference questions, don't automatically start matching them up. That's going to take too much time. Instead, do the first question, which has the normal statements, and eliminate whatever you can. And if you have it narrowed down to, let's say, 2 answer choices, then you can start looking at that line reference question and matching it up to see which one works. Because if you start from the very beginning, what you will find is that a wrong pair is also in the answer choices. Remember, the test makers are not trying to be your friends. They're probably not, wouldn't even say they're trying to be your enemies, but they are trying to get you to sort of a middle range score, which is about a 50%. So in order to do that, there have to be tiny things that they throw in to essentially throw you off. And this whole scoring system and everything we will talk about in a future video, but I wanted to basically highlight the fact that just because an answer is obvious doesn't necessarily, or rather a choice is obvious, doesn't necessarily make it the right answer. So after that, one of the biggest mistakes most students make are on visual-based questions. Now, if a passage has a visual, and as we talked about before, that you will have 2 science passages and 2 science or social studies / history, chances are you're going to have some sort of visuals in them. Whether, maybe 2 out of 4 will have some sort of visuals, but you will be answering questions based on visuals. Take the time in your pre-read portion. So when you were answering those questions and everything, take the time then to actually look over the visuals, to read the x-axis, the y-axis, the title, the data, and fully understand it. Chances are they're going to pick visuals that you wouldn't normally see in class and make it a little funky chart or line graph or whatever it might be. So there's no real way to fully practice for it outside of doing a bunch of different questions and getting exposure to the variety of different visuals. But when you see the visual, spend legitimate time on the visual. Why? Because at least 1 to 2 questions are going to be based on that visual. So fully take the time before you start reading this passage to understand what the heck that visual is saying. Now, that covers some of the majority types of questions that we get. Then we have we have the specific line reference questions, and this will be, such and such is happening in line such and such. Here's a question based on it. What do you do? Well, every time you have a line reference question, which again means that they just gave you the coordinates. Here's where we're talking about. So they gave you the coordinates. You're always going to mark up your frame, which is that 5 up, 5 down. And if it goes outside of a paragraph, then you don't have to go outside of that paragraph window, because once you switch paragraphs, you switch ideas. So you don't have to leave the paragraph, but you do have to go at 5 up, 5 down. So with that said, we have the major summary. Just a quick recap. We have the general questions, we have the vocab-in-context, we have the buy one get one free, we have the visuals, and finally we have the line reference questions. So with that, let's now get to your homework portion, which is basically going to be to identify the various types of questions as you read through some of these texts. Tomorrow, we will talk more about the elimination strategies and actually dive into exactly how to start narrowing your options down and finally picking the correct answer. I'll see you then.